He's going to be healed again.
Enjoyed seeing family. It's good to be back.
Called Mount of Olives. He sent two of his disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you, and as you enter it, you will find a colt tied there, which no one has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, 'Why are you untying it?' tell him, 'The Lord needs it.'" The next day, the great crowd that had come for the feast heard that Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. They took palm branches and went out to meet him, shouting, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord! Blessed is the King of Israel!" This took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. "Say to the daughter of Zion, See, your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey." A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, and others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." "I tell you," he replied, "if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out." As he approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it and said, "If you, even you, had only known the mercy of the Lord."
Jesus entered the temple area and drove out all who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves.
"It is written,"
He said to them,
"My house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers."
The blind and the lame came to him at the temple, and he healed them. But when the chief priests and the teachers of the law saw the wonderful things he did, and the children shouting in the temple area,
"Hosanna to the Son of David!"
they were indignant.
"Do you hear what these children are saying?"
They asked him. "Yes," replied Jesus.
Have you never read, 'From the lips of children and infants you have ordained praise'?"
The chief priests and the teachers of the law heard this and began looking for a way to kill him, for they feared him, because the whole crowd was amazed at his teaching.
Reclining at the table in the home of a man known as Simon the leper, here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took about a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected, "Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages." He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. "Leave her alone," said Jesus. "Why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, and you can help them any time you want. But you will not always have me. She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare for my burial. I tell you the truth, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her."
It was just before the Passover feast. Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. The evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him.
He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied,
You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand.
"No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered,
Unless I wash you, you have no part with me.
"Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered,
A person who has had a bath needs only to wash his feet. His whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you.
for he knew who was going to betray him. And that was why he said, not everyone was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place.
Do you understand what I have done for you?
He asked them.
You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you.
While they were reclining at the table eating, he said,
I tell you the truth. One of you will betray me. One who is eating with me.
They were saddened, and one by one they said to him, Surely not I.
It is one of the 12.
He replied,
One who dips bread into the bowl with me.
One of them, the disciple whom Jesus loved, was reclining next to him. Simon Peter motioned to this disciple and said, Ask him which one he means. Leaning back against Jesus, he asked him, Lord, who is it? Jesus answered,
It is the one to whom I will give this piece of bread when I have dipped it in the dish.
Then, dipping the piece of bread, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, son of Simon. As soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered into him.
What you are about to do quickly,
Jesus told him. After taking the cup, he gave thanks and said,
Take this and divide it among you. For I tell you, I will not drink again of the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes.
And he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to them, saying,
This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me.
In the same way, after the supper, he took the cup, saying,
This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you.
When they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives.
He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled.
My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death,
He said to them.
Stay here and keep watch.
Going a little farther, he fell to the ground and prayed that if possible, the hour might pass from him.
Abba, Father,
He said,
everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me. Yet not what I will, but what you will.
An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. When he rose from prayer and went back to the disciples, he found them asleep, exhausted from sorrow.
Could you men not keep watch with me for 1 hour?
He asked Peter.
Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak.
He went away a second time and prayed,
My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done.
When he came back, he again found them sleeping, because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the third time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them,
Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour is near, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer.
Now Judas, who betrayed him, knew the place because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. So Judas came to the grove, guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and Pharisees. They were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, went out and asked them,
Who is it you want?
Jesus of Nazareth.
They replied, I am he, Jesus said. And Judas the traitor was standing there with them. When Jesus said, I am he, they drew back and fell to the ground. Again he asked them, Who is it you want? And they said,
Jesus of Nazareth.
I told you that I am he, Jesus answered. If you are looking for me, then let these men go.
This happened so that the words he had spoken would be fulfilled.
I have not lost one of those you gave me.
At that time, Jesus said to the crowd,
Am I leading a rebellion that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat in the temple courts teaching, and you did not arrest me. But this has all taken place that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled.
Then all the disciples deserted him and fled.
Then the detachment of soldiers with its commander and the Jewish officials arrested Jesus. They bound him and brought him first to Annas.
Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the teachers of the law and the elders had assembled.
The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for evidence against Jesus, so that they could put him to death. But they did not find any. Many testified falsely against him, but their statements did not agree. Then some stood up and gave this false testimony against him.
We heard him say, I will destroy this man-made temple, and in 3 days will build another, not made by man.
Yet even then their testimony did not agree. Then the high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus,
Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?
But Jesus remained silent. The high priest said to him,
I charge you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God.
Yes, it is as you say.
Jesus replied,
But I say to all of you, in the future you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven.
Then the high priest tore his clothes and said,
He has spoken blasphemy. Why do we need any more witnesses? Look, now you have heard the blasphemy. What do you think? He is worthy of death.
They answered,
The men who were guarding Jesus began mocking and beating him. They blindfolded him and demanded,
Prophesy! Who hit you?
Peter followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest. There he sat with the guards and warmed himself at the fire. While Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came by. When she saw Peter warming himself, she looked closely at him.
You also were with that Nazarene Jesus,
She said, but he denied it.
I don't know or understand what you're talking about.
He said, and went out into the entryway.
Then he went out to the gateway where another girl saw him and said to the people there,
This fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth.
He denied it again with an oath.
I don't know the man.
After a little while, those standing near said to Peter,
Surely you are one of them.
He began to call down curses on himself, and he swore to them.
I don't know this man you're talking about.
Immediately the rooster crowed the second time. Then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken to him.
Before the rooster crows twice, you will disown me 3 times.
And he broke down and wept.
Bring in the the prisoner!
Then the Jews led Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. By now it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanness, the Jews did not enter the palace. They wanted to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate came out to them and asked,
"What charges are you bringing against this man?"
"If he were not a criminal," they replied, "we would not have handed him over to you."
Pilate said,
"Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law."
"But we have no right to execute anyone."
The Jews objected. This happened so that the words Jesus had spoken, indicating the kind of death he was going to die, would be fulfilled. Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him,
"Are you the king of the Jews?"
"Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked, "or did others talk to you about me?"
"Am I a Jew?"
Pilate replied.
"It was your people and your chief priests who handed you over to me. What is it you have done?"
Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jews. But now my kingdom is from another place."
"You are a king, then,"
said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You are right in saying I am a king. In fact, for this reason I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me."
"What is truth?"
Pilate asked. Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people, and said to them,
"You brought me this man as one who was inciting the people to rebellion. I have examined him in your presence and have found no basis for your charges against him. But it is your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at the time of the Passover. Do you want me to release the king of the Jews?"
When the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them,
"Which one do you want me to release to you? Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ?"
For he knew it was out of envy that they had handed Jesus over to him. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message.
"Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him."
But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed.
"Which of the two do you want me to release to you?"
asked the governor. With one voice they cried out, "Insurrection in the city, and for murder."
"What shall I do then with the one you call the king of the Jews?"
Crucify!
What crime has he committed?
To satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They clothed him in a purple robe and went up to him again and again, saying,
"Hail, King of the Jews!"
And they struck him in the face. As soon as the chief priests and their officials saw him, they shouted,
Crucify him!
Crucify!
But Pilate answered,
"You take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for a charge against him."
But they shouted,
"Take him away!
Take him away! Take him away!
Shall I crucify your king?"
Pilate asked.
We have
no king but Caesar!
The priests answered. When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd.
"I am innocent of this man's blood,"
he said.
"It is your responsibility."
All the people answered,
"Let his blood be on us and on our children!"
and when they had mocked him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him out to crucify him.
Clear path! Clear path! Watch the crowd. Keep moving.
cross. Get in there. Get him out of there. Come on. Get this moving. Watch the crowd. Come on. Come on. Get him in. Get in there. Come on. Keep it going. Watch the crowd.
Who's got the hammer?
Get the nails in deep.
Hold his hands.
Deep. Lift! Push! Come on, push!
They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. There they offered Jesus wine to drink, mixed with gall. But after tasting it, he refused to drink it. And sitting down, they kept watch over him there. Pilate had a notice prepared and fastened to the cross. It read, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." Many of the Jews read this sign, for the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and the sign was written in Aramaic, Latin, and Greek.
It was the third hour when they crucified him.
Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they divided up his clothes by casting lots.
Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying,
"So, you who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, come down from the cross and save yourself."
In the same way, the chief priests and the teachers of the law mocked him among themselves.
"He saved others,"
they said,
"but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him, for he said, 'I am the Son of God.'"
One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other criminal rebuked him. "Don't you fear God?" he said, "since you are under the same sentence. We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus answered him, "I tell you the truth. Today you will be with me in paradise."
Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there, and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother,
"Dear woman, here is your son."
And to the disciple,
"Here is your mother."
From that time on, this disciple took her into his home.
From the 6th hour until the 9th hour, darkness came over all the land. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice,
"Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani,"
which means,
my God, why have you forsaken me?"
Later, knowing that all was now completed, and so that the scripture would be fulfilled, Jesus said,
"I am thirsty."
A jar of wine vinegar was there, so they soaked a sponge in it, put the sponge on a stalk of the hyssop plant, and lifted it to Jesus' lips. When he had received the drink,
Jesus called out with a loud voice,
"Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. It is finished."
With that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit.
when the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified, exclaimed,
"Surely he was the Son of God."
Many women were there watching from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons.
Now it was the day of preparation, and the next day was to be a special Sabbath. Because the Jews did not want the bodies left on the crosses during the Sabbath, they asked Pilate to have the legs broken and the bodies taken down. The soldiers therefore came and broke the legs of the first man who had been crucified with Jesus, and then those of the other. But when they came to Jesus and found that he was already dead, they did not break his legs.
It was preparation day, and the Sabbath was about to begin. There was a man named Joseph, a member of the council, a good and upright man, who had not consented to their decision and action. He came from the Judean town of Arimathea, and he was waiting for the kingdom of God.
Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. Now, Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly, because he feared the Jews. With Pilate's permission, he came and took the body away. He was accompanied by Nicodemus, the man who earlier had visited Jesus at night. Nicodemus brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds. Taking Jesus' body, the two of them wrapped it with the spices in strips of linen. This was in accordance with Jewish burial customs.
Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they might go to anoint Jesus' body. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb, and they asked each other,
"Who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb?"
There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the woman,
"Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he has risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you."
So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid, yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples.
So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said,
"They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him."
So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter, who was behind him, arrived and went into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the burial cloth that had been around Jesus' head. The cloth was folded up by itself, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple, who had reached the tomb first, also went inside. He saw and believed.